Late in the game when it's close, you've got you've got Kyrie. What's your feeling? What's your confidence like in those situations?
A big confidence. We have, like I always say, great team. A lot, not just me and Kai, other players on our team are capable of making that shot, whatever it's a three or a layup. As you saw, like I said, PJ with a big three, Gaff with an amazing and one. So we have big confidence in ourselves.
On this episode of Inside the Mavs, the Dallas Mavericks put the Timberwolves on the brink of elimination as they take Game 3 of the Western Conference Finals thanks to Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving closing the show and their defense doing the job in the fourth quarter. This is Inside the Mavs. Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video as well. And follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. How about the Dallas Mavericks? One win away from reaching the NBA Finals after they take Game 3, 116-107 at the American Airlines Center as Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving combined for 66 points, 21 of the 29 points in the fourth quarter as the Mavericks do what they have to do in clutch time. Their defense holding the Timberwolves to one field goal in the final 5 minutes as the Mavericks now have won 5 straight postseason games and now have put the Timberwolves on the brink of elimination thanks to an incredible, thrilling win for your Dallas Mavericks. It was a terrific scene at the AAC for game number 3. The stars were out in full force. Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Queen Latifah, all the stars that you want to name, they were at game number 3 as, of course, the Mavericks tried to get themselves that one step closer to the NBA Finals, and they were able to do so. Their defense doing the job, and Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving closing the show, continuing to be the superstars of the evening to put the Mavericks on their backs and be able to get it done where they were dealing with a significant injury as Derek Lively II had to leave the game with 8:35 left in the second quarter after taking an inadvertent knee to the back of the head. He left with a sprained neck. We will see what his status will be going into game number 4 on Tuesday. And that played a huge part in the way that the Timberwolves were able to find themselves getting back into the game, especially in that third quarter. But we'll get to that here in just a little bit. But what can you say about the resolve, the resiliency, the toughness, the heart, the grit of this Mavericks team to find a way to win? And they were extremely good from 3. They went 14 of 28 from the three-point line. PJ Washington's go-ahead three-pointer with 3:38 left in the fourth quarter. The Mavericks did not look back from there as they were able to get it done, moving now one step closer to the NBA Finals. You look at what happened in that fourth quarter for the Mavericks, closing the game on what was a 12-3 run, going 11 of 15 from the field and 3 of 3 from downtown in that decisive fourth quarter as the game, of course, was tied at 87 to begin the period. But there were a lot of heroes in this game when you look at the Mavericks and what they were able to get from guys like PJ Washington, who went 5 of 10 from the field. He had 16 points. Derrick Jones Jr. was great from the three-point line. All 3 of his threes coming from that right corner. He had 11 points. It was a plus 15. Obviously, Daniel Gafford in the game as well. He had 5 points, was a plus 10. He had 3 big block shots as well. Everyone contributed and chipped in for this team to be able to get them where they needed to be. Even Dwight Powell, who had to play 7 minutes, in the game because of Derek Lively's injury. It played a major part in terms of the Timberwolves getting back in it, but at the same time, next man up mentality for the Mavericks. Plenty to get to when it comes to this game, starting obviously in the first quarter as the Mavericks started off hot from the three-point line. 3 of 3 from downtown. They had 3 right corner threes with P.J. Washington, Derrick Jones Jr., Kyrie Irving, and you could tell that the Mavericks were feeling good from the three-point line. They were able to lead at 26-23 with 2 minutes left in that first quarter after a Kyle Anderson floater, but the Mavericks would outscore the Timberwolves 7-5 in the final 2 minutes. Despite Nickeil Alexander-Walker hitting a three-pointer at the end of the first, the Mavericks led 33-28 at the end of one. And one of the things that you saw from the Minnesota Timberwolves in this game, what they wanted to do was to blitz and double Luka Dončić to try to get the ball out of his hands and to make others be able to make plays, whether it be in the short roll or be able to make threes off the passes that they were going to get from other guys outside of Luka Dončić. And you give the Mavericks credit for being able to knock down three-pointers, especially in that first quarter, to keep the Timberwolves defense honest. And more importantly, they were trapping him. They were doubling him, trying to make him a passer. But you saw them be able to make plays out of the short roll, finding Derek Lively for dunks. Luka Doncic's ability to throw over the tops of double teams to be able to make things happen. That's one of the things when you look at Luka and how great that he is, whether he's a scorer as a passer, it's really pick your poison because his vision is so damn good that he's going to see over those double teams and he's going to compute the information to understand what you're trying to do against him. And he's going to find ways to make his teammates better. And the confidence that everyone has in each other, the chemistry, the trust, all the buzzwords that Jason Kidd and this team talk about was evident throughout the course of Game 3. And they leaned on that, especially down the stretch. But you could tell the strategy for Minnesota, who tried to throw the kitchen sink at the Dallas Mavericks to try to make sure that they didn't go down 0-3. They wanted to try and force Luka into being a passer, but his teammates made them pay for that by knocking down shots and being able to finish at the rim. Daniel Gafford with his defense early on with a nice block shot on a Karl Anthony Towns dunk attempt. Yes, I know he got posterized a little bit later on in the game by Anthony Edwards in that third quarter where the Timberwolves started to make their run. Sometimes that's going to happen. But again, the Mavericks finding a way to get contributions from a number of individuals to be able to be in position to win this game. More on this game here in just a moment as we get to how Kyrie Irving and Luka Dončić close the show, the huge shot by P.J. Washington, and some of the key moments and hustle plays, including Luka Dončić winning a jump ball over Anthony Edwards that was huge in this particular game. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Thank you for hanging out with us through that spot, and thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast in Aura as the Mavericks get the 116-107 win over the Minnesota Timberwolves to put the Minnesota Timberwolves on the brink of elimination. PJ Washington's go-ahead three-pointer with 3:38 left in the fourth quarter helped the Mavericks don't look back from there to be able to get the 9-point win. A gutsy, collective team effort win as the Mavericks now sit one win away from reaching the NBA Finals. An update when it comes to Derek Lively II, as Tim McMahon of ESPN reports that Mavs rookie center Derek Lively II left the arena to get a scan to evaluate the severity of his sprained neck. Lively is not in the NBA's concussion protocol at this point. So an update for those looking for it when it comes to Derek Lively II and hopefully his availability and what it looks like for game number 4 on Tuesday. And we mentioned a little bit of that when it came to the complexion of how this game changed. Lively, who got the block on one end, finishing with a punch on the other end off of a lob from Luka Dončić. That came in the first quarter to have him up by 6. That gave you an indication of the impact that Lively was going to have on this game after having a terrific game number 2 against Minnesota as well. But you look at the second quarter, the Mavs were up by 5 to begin that second period. They increased their lead to 10 at 43-33, just 3 minutes into that second quarter after a Kyrie Irving jumper. But then the Timberwolves went on a quick 5-0 run to cut the lead to 5. Then the Mavericks responded right back with a quick 5-0 burst to get it up to 48-30, eventually getting the lead to 12, not once, but twice at 50-38 with 5.5 minutes left. And then at 55-43 with 2 minutes left after Kyrie Irving's three-pointer. And again, this was a massive difference that we have been looking for the Mavericks to be able to do, which was start being much more consistent from the three-point line. And in this game, they went 14-28, going 50% from the field. Both of these teams were shooting the ball extremely well throughout the course of game 3, and you could tell that the Timberwolves were playing with that sense of desperation. But as we mentioned, with 8:35 left in the second quarter, Derek Lively, as he's falling to the ground, takes an inadvertent knee from Karl-Anthony Towns to the back of the head, and he had to leave the game. And there was a lot of concern because not only were you going to lean on Daniel Gafford continuing going forward pretty much as your only center, but obviously for Dwight Powell, who hasn't played much in the postseason, was going to be playing some minutes as well. He wound up playing nearly 8 minutes in the game. And that, for me, is when things started to change, especially in that third quarter, which we'll get to, which was that the Timberwolves started to attack downhill, and Anthony Edwards really got going in that third quarter. But for the Mavericks, they were able to maintain what was an 8-point lead going into halftime as Luka and Kyrie each had 7 points. Kyrie Irving was able to get a lefty layup, a gorgeous lefty layup that had him up by 12 at 52-40 with 4:19 left in the first half, and then drilling another three-pointer on the right wing to put them up again by 12. And the Mavericks' ability to knock down corner threes was spectacular in game 3. Remember, the Mavericks made more corner threes than any team in the league this year, and they put that on full display in game number 3. Rudy Gobert had 7 points for Minnesota during that second period as they outscored the Mavericks 9-5 in the final 2 minutes to cut that deficit to 8 going into halftime. And you felt like the Timberwolves were starting to gain a little bit of momentum. Karl-Anthony Towns would start to pick it up in the second half, particularly in that third quarter once Lively went out, because I had tweeted it out at Kevin Gray Sports that, you know, the Timberwolves felt like they could start to attack more and get more downhill, especially when Daniel Gafford was not on the floor, dealing with some fouls in the game as well. And you felt like for the Timberwolves, that confidence was starting to grow with them being able to cut into the lead going into halftime, and then what they could potentially do to build on that in the third quarter. And that's exactly what they did, because that's where the feel of the game changed dramatically for the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. But one thing I want to note in that second quarter, where the Mavericks were able to be a +5 in the first 3.5 minutes that Luka Dončić was out to begin the second quarter, because if you notice, in the first quarter, he played the entirety of the first period, all 12 minutes. They were able to get him 3.5 minutes of rest at the beginning of the second quarter, and the Mavericks were able to maintain and be a plus in that situation where they were a +5. Josh Green hitting a three-pointer to help increase the Mavericks lead to 7 at 38-31 within the first 2 minutes of the second quarter. That just gives you an example of the guys that needed to contribute, with Luka trying to get some rest and Josh Green stepping up as he's done so throughout the course of the playoffs at various times, be able to make some plays for the Mavericks, and he did so in helping the Mavericks be a +5 in those first 3+ minutes that Luka was out in the second quarter. Derrick Jones Jr., who continued to shoot the ball well from 3 in the first half, also knocked down a 3-pointer in the second quarter as well. But that really got us to the second half. Again, with Derek Lively going out in the second quarter, as I mentioned, with 8.5 minutes left in that period, that changed the feel of the game going into the third quarter, where the Mavericks were up by 8 to begin the second half. They maintained that 8-point lead 2.5 minutes into the period and led 69-61 with 9.5 minutes left to go. They led by 5 at 76-71, but the Minnesota Timberwolves would go on what would be a 15-3 run to eventually take a 2-point lead at 79-77. And I mentioned how the Timberwolves were able to start to get things going, especially getting downhill, and more importantly, getting Karl-Anthony Towns and also Anthony Edwards going. They combined in that third quarter to score 19 of the 35 points that the Timberwolves had. Anthony Edwards went 5 of 10. He had 3 assists, was a +8. Karl-Anthony Towns went 3 of 4. He was able to get 9 points, was a +6 as well, and had 5 rebounds. Again, with the lack of size and the rotation, where Jason Kidd continued to keep the rotation the same when it came to Daniel Gafford and Dwight Powell, even without Derek Lively, you saw the confidence that was brewing for Minnesota based on their abilities to find a way to get downhill and get to the basket. In fact, you look at what they did from their 2-point field goals. They went 10 of 16 from 2-point field goals. They went 4 of 6 from downtown in that third quarter to really get themselves back into this game. And you felt like, look, Minnesota playing with that kind of desperation, you knew that they were going to make a run, and that's exactly what they did to change the way that they were feeling confidence-wise going into the fourth quarter. You give Luka Dončić credit. He knocked down a rare catch-and-shoot 3 during that third period. But the Mavericks, after they got down by 2, 79-77 after a Naz Reid layup, again, the Timberwolves going on that 15-3 run, the Mavericks' resiliency responding once again. They went on a 6-0 run to lead 83-79 with just under 2 minutes left in the third, and the Timberwolves, though, would outscore the Mavericks 8-4 in the final 2 minutes to have the game tied at 87. A big bucket, though, came from Jaden Hardy at the end of that third quarter, though, as he hit a tough, hanging, banking layup to tie the game at 87 with less than a second left in the period to be able to tie the game at 87. Luka Dončić was able to get that 26-point mark by knocking down a jump shot in transition that had the Mavericks up 85-82 with 52 seconds left in the period. Prior to that, Kyrie Irving had to end that 15-3 run by hitting a fadeaway to tie the game at 79. So again, the Mavericks being able to punch back after getting punched in the mouth with a big run has been a consistent theme throughout the course of the regular season and also in the postseason, withstanding runs and being able to respond in kind themselves with opportunities to keep themselves in games. And that is the mark of a true championship team with that kind of DNA, to not get too high, not get too low, but also be able to respond to the runs that are going to be made by the best teams in the league, which where we are now, you're playing the best teams in the league. And the Mavericks continue to prove why they are one of the best teams and on their way potentially to the NBA Finals. But Luka Dončić hitting Daniel Gafford with a lob for a punch at the rim on a pick and roll, punishing the drop coverage of Rudy Gobert to be able to get things going with the vertical game. That will be a sign of things to come going into the fourth quarter, as the Mavericks were at that point up by 10 with 7.5 minutes left. But you give Minnesota credit for getting back into this game and being able to ultimately get it to where it was tied going into the fourth quarter, with Anthony Edwards really starting to get himself into attack mode. And we mentioned, without Derek Lively in there, not the normal rotation with Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively, Gafford playing more extended minutes, he got caught by Anthony Edwards on a poster. And one of the signature moments of the playoffs, and definitely the signature moment so far for Anthony Edwards in this series, reminding us of why he's been such a dynamite player in this postseason, putting Gafford on that poster. But at the same time, look, man, sometimes it's going to happen when you challenge folks at the rim, and it happens. And one of the things that will come out in terms of the criticism of the game itself is the officiating, and how at times the pace of the game was slowed down by Tony Brothers and his crew. by some of the missed calls that were had in this game. At one point, Tony Brothers missing an obvious call that would have given the ball back to the Dallas Mavericks. Sometimes during the game, the officiating wasn't great. But again, when you're in these situations, it's about overcoming your opponent, sometimes overcoming the officiating as well, because you've got to remain focused on the task at hand, regardless of the circumstances. And the Mavericks were able to do that once again. But that set up us going into the fourth quarter, a dramatic fourth quarter that began tied at 87. Kyrie Irving, what can you say about Kyrie Irving and his fourth quarters and second halves during this entire season and what he continues to do in the postseason? It became Kyrie Irving time in the fourth quarter. He scored the first 7 points for the Mavericks. He and Luka combined for the first 11 points of the period as the game was tied at 98, less than 8 minutes left in the game. A back and forth fourth quarter, but Kyrie Irving getting things started, getting the Mavericks a 2-point lead at the beginning of the third. He then tied the game at 94 with a step back jumper. Then Dončić being able to drain his three-pointer of his own on the right side, and you felt the Mavericks start to get cooking on the offensive end with Luka Dončić resting for those first couple of minutes and Kyrie Irving taking over in the first 2 to 3 minutes of that fourth quarter. He understands when to go, when to take over, and he did it in game number 3 once again. But as I mentioned, it was a seesaw back and forth fourth quarter, game tied at 100 after a P.J. Washington second chance basket with 7 minutes left. Game tied again at 104 with 4.5 minutes left after a Kyrie Irving floater forced a Timberwolves timeout. The Mavericks, though, at that particular point with the game tied at 104, that is when their defense, which has been their calling card all season long, locked down once again. We know that during their most meaningful games in that 18-game stretch where they went 16-2 before their final couple of games of the regular season where the outcomes didn't matter, they were the best defense in the league. That defense showed up in the fourth quarter, and they put the clamps on Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards. You look at that fourth quarter and what they were able to do against their two best scorers, where, of course, we had mentioned how well Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards were able to play in that third quarter. In the fourth quarter, Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards combined for a total of 4 points. Anthony Edwards went 2 of 3 from the field, was a -8. Karl-Anthony Towns went 0 of 4 in nearly all of the fourth quarter and had 0 points and was a -9. That is the kind of defense and championship defense that the Mavericks played when they needed it most. They held the Minnesota Timberwolves to 1 field goal in the last 5 minutes of the game, and their offense was able to take advantage of it, and you give the Mavericks credit as they closed the game on a 12-3 run led by Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving, who combined, of course, in that fourth quarter for 21 of the 29 points, and P.J. Washington, his go-ahead three-pointer with 3:38 left in the game, gave the Mavericks a 107-104 lead they would not look back from. And a couple of moments that I want to point out that happened throughout the course of the second half, because let's think about it. In the third quarter, the Mavericks made a really nice adjustment by going after Mike Conley. In the first few minutes of that third quarter, he got 3 fouls in the first 3.5 minutes, picking on him, getting him into foul trouble. Of course, as their leader and floor general running that offense, they wanted to make sure that they were getting him into foul trouble. And then another moment in the third quarter, Luka Dončić showing some terrific leadership. This is what I'm talking about when it comes to your superstars being your leaders, recognizing the moment, and putting the confidence into their teammates. Luka Dončić shows some great leadership, and it won't be talked about all that much, but I want to make sure that we highlight it here. Luka Dončić saw that Jaden Hardy had gotten Rudy Gobert switched out onto him, and he told Jaden Hardy, look, you go and get it. You've got it. You put him on an island. You go ahead and go dance with him and try to draw the foul yourself. And that's exactly what Jaden Hardy did, drawing Rudy Gobert's fourth foul with 2:31 left in that third quarter. And I thought that was just a terrific moment of leadership from Luka Dončić and what he showed for his team. And for this team, they continue to have confidence in each other. And for Luka, learning from Kyrie Irving and what to do in those moments I thought that was a great example of how a leader continues to grow and mature. And Luka Doncic is talking about after the game what he's learned from Kyrie Irving. And I want you to take a listen to that because I thought it was insightful on what he's been able to learn and what now he's trying to accomplish going forward for the rest of this postseason. Take a listen.
I'm just wondering, Kyrie has obviously been to the finals before. He's won a finals. How much have you learned from him just going through these playoffs and the way he performs in these games and throughout this partnership you've formed?
A lot. Just right now when we were winning by 9 last possession, I told him I'm tired of shit. And he told me that's the way it's supposed to be, And it's just he brought that calmness to our team, to me, the maturity, and it's been unbelievable to have him on our team. Just learning from him every day, positive energy always. So just a blessing having him on our team.
So you could tell what Luka Doncic continues to learn from him. Even being tired, he is performing in these moments and learning what it's like to pursue a championship. Kyrie Irving, who's back in the Western Conference or back in the conference finals for the first time in 7 years, of course, a former NBA champion, been to the NBA finals a few times. He understands the grind that it takes to get there, but it also takes the confidence of your role players, being able to know that they're working on their games and being prepared for those moments. And that's exactly what PJ Washington was when his time came, continuing to hit big shot after big shot, big free throw after big free throw. Of course, he was the one to hit the free throws to seal the game against the Thunder to get them to the Western Conference Finals. He's had big games against the Thunder, has had big moments in this series, and he did so again tonight. PJ Washington talked about what he's worked on since coming to the Mavericks that had him prepared to seize the moment against the Timberwolves in Game 3.
And you hit another corner three. You've hit that shot time and time again throughout the playoffs. Just talk a little bit about the work that you put into that shot and just being ready when that time calls upon it.
Just been working on it. I mean, since I got here, that's been the biggest shot I've been working on. So just trying to take it with confidence. I mean, it's a shot I can hit. So just credit to my teammates for putting that confidence in me, and I'm going to shoot every open one.
So Washington's confidence continuing to grow for this team, and it's evident in the trust and the confidence that his teammates have in him in those big moments to knock down those shots. One last thing I want to point out, because when you look at what this team has gone through to get to this point and how they have collectively embraced the hustle and the effort and the defensive intensity needed to win games, no further evidence than what happened with 152 left in the game. Luka Dončić diving on the floor for a loose ball and fighting with Anthony Edwards to be able to eventually get a jump ball. Then Dončić would win the tip with 152 left in the game. That to me just gives you what that kind of effort looks like, what his consistency has looked like, even through the injuries that he's dealing with, to have him fighting in those moments to be able to get a jump ball for his team and ultimately win the tip. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the heart of a champion, and Luka Dončić is displaying that to be able to help his team get into this position. And of course, after PJ Washington's go-ahead three-pointer, the Mavericks would continue to pour it on. Doncic hitting that Dirk-like fadeaway with 2:16 left to put the Mavericks up by 4. Then Kyrie Irving hitting a step back to have them up by 6 with just over a minute left in the game. And then the punctuation on this game for the Dallas Mavericks, Luka Doncic with the gorgeous left-hand lob pass to Daniel Gafford for the punch at the rim and the and one. He would hit the free throw to put him up by 9 with 34 seconds left. And the poise and the calm that the Mavericks did in executing on the offensive end, locking down on the defensive end, and letting the game come to them in the fourth quarter and forcing the Timberwolves to make mistakes and not being able to knock down shots. The Mavericks played this game perfectly to a T, and now they are the ones that are on the cusp of, yes, making the NBA Finals. Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving have spearheaded this team moment after moment, time after time, game after game to be in this position, and you give them credit for doing that. Daniel Gafford had a big fourth quarter, going 1 of 2 with the 3 points. We mentioned PJ Washington was a +9, had the 5 points in the go-ahead three-pointer. And this Mavericks team shot the lights out in the fourth quarter, going what was 11 of 15 from the field and a perfect 3 of 3 from downtown, holding the Timberwolves to 1 of 8 from 3 and 9 of 20 overall from the field. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the formula on how to win and get yourself in position to make the NBA Finals. It won't be easy, obviously, in Game 4 to put this team away, but we know the history. No team in the NBA has ever come back from being down 3-0 to win a series. The Mavericks have put themselves in a position for a closeout game in what has been a competitive series, an extremely competitive series between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Mavericks. They are the ones executing down the stretch, and you give the Mavericks and Jason Kidd credit for having this team be able to be in this spot to be able to potentially close out the Timberwolves on Tuesday night. But what a fabulous game, a nip and tuck game, back and forth, especially in the fourth quarter. High-level play from both teams, but your Mavericks are the ones that come out on the other side ready to try and seize their trip to the NBA Finals after getting a 9-point win at home over the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now up 3-0, a commanding 3-0 lead as they have the Timberwolves now on the brink of elimination. Heroes throughout the course of this game: Luka, Kyrie, PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford, big down the stretch, and we will see about the availability of Derek Lively II going into Game 4 on Tuesday. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Thank you again for joining me here on the show. Make sure you download and subscribe to the Inside the Mavs podcast wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating. Write a review for it while you're there. And you can also like and comment on the video and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. This has been Inside the Mavs. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. This has been Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura.